Hi, it's Michael Kerr here, presenting Small Business Banter. A healthy micro and small business sector means a successful economy and a more vibrant society. Small Business Banter is about helping regional business owners better prepare for current challenges, but also for the next stage of business success. I'm Michael Kerr, founder of Kerr Capital, advisors to business owners. Each week, I interview a fellow small business owner or an expert, and they share their stories, their lived experiences, the wins and the losses, and their best advice to help you, the listener, get the most you can from your own business. Small Business Banter is brought to you from the studios of 104.7 Gippsland FM and is heard across Australia on the Community Radio Network. And thanks also to Kerr Capital, supporters of the show. Welcome into another edition of Small Business Banter Community Radio and Podcast. I'm really pleased to welcome in today Francis Loughran, who was the founder of Future Food, a food and beverage consultancy. And what we're going to be chatting to Francis about today is his experience starting that business, a very successful business, and then recently transitioning it to some staff buyers. So looking forward to getting to the conversation. Francis, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Michael, for giving me the opportunity to introduce my business and the journey that I came on over the 34 years of consultancy.
Yeah, look, the business was very successful. I think you were a complete forerunner in your industry. The business, you can tell people in a minute what it did, but I do want to speak for you in the sense that you achieved many great things, including taking the business to international shores from Australia. So quite an achievement. Do you want to just talk briefly about what Future Food remains as a business, and then if you could tell us a little bit about how you got started in that business and that industry?
Yes, that would give me great pleasure. So Future Food is a consultancy that was developed by the need for many sectors of the industry looking for independent management advice on how to set up, manage, and assess food and beverage operations. Those food and beverage operations today include planning food and beverage in shopping centres, in airports, in transit hubs, shopping centre precincts of large, medium, and extremely large, like the Dubai Mall, and projects like Westfield and Sydney, Westfield, Melbourne, Westfield, Doncaster, Westfield, Auckland, and again, other areas of expertise running tenders and expression of interest for local government council, and also looking at very specialist areas such as developing food and beverage concepts for hotel groups. So Holiday Inn, for example, will come to us and say, we're developing a new hotel in Geelong, and we need to know what the food and beverage mix should be for that. So we look at the total trade area of Geelong. Where are the gaps in the concepts? What are the gaps in every hotel in relation to what they need? So the gaps are always, you must produce a food and beverage all-day dining for breakfast, lunch and dinner for your hotel guests. That's part of your commitment for hotel license. Then you always want to have a residence bar. Along with that, you want a specialty restaurant. So at the end of the day, Future Food can provide food and beverage across all sectors of commercial enterprise for food and beverage.
Underpinning that is how important food, like from a consumer's point of view and from a landlord or any other operator's point of view, food has become so important, and you can't just get away with fried stuff. And that's been the case for a long time, and that's what you're expert at.
That's correct. Look, going back to the early days, 1989, 1990, when we started consulting both here in Australia and New Zealand, we could see very clearly that those shopping centres that were able to offer quality food and beverage beyond the mum and dad cafe or the fried food outlet, those shopping centres, those retail precincts, those leisure parks, those theatres, government buildings, museums, galleries,
universities.
those outlets, universities as well, they were all looking for food and beverage to be part of the experience, to offer service to the students, to the travellers, to the shoppers. They also wanted to see clearly how they could maximise their rental value and asset value. Food will generate excellent rents. Food will generate food traffic over 6 or 7 days a week. Food will generate revenue from breakfast, lunch, afternoon, early evening, and late evening. And even food today is considered a major part of any standalone retail precinct or cinema complex, which we call entertainment and leisure complexes. So food continues to shape the asset value and, most of all, the point of difference and the revenue streams that developers and owners and managers want.
Yeah, so what that parlays to, if I can paraphrase that, is if you've got a building and you have a substandard food offering, people will either not come or they'll stay less time in the building. Therefore, trade, whoever's in the building as a tenant, won't have the foot traffic, so that they'll pay less rent. If flip that around, you've got high quality food offerings, people will come for that and possibly and likely stay longer. So that's how it transitions. So the rent increases, therefore the value of the premises or the building increases. Is that the?
That's correct, yes. Yeah. So the average spend is based upon the quality. So good coffee, $5, multiplied by 600 cups of coffee a day, which equates to the revenue that the landlord will then look at that over a 365-day period. And then they'll set the rental value against that and any percentage rent that they can get as a second revenue stream. So from a landlord's point of view, when the operator trades to maximum capacity, maximum sales, maximum profit, the landlord also shares in that as well. Mm-hmm. So that's what we call the business of food. And the business of food is the core platform in which you understand your fixed and variable costs in order to maximize profit for the operator and to understand your renting contributions and outgoings to your landlord and other suppliers.
Yeah, so you really clearly know your industry extremely well, and we might come back to some more of how the business operates. Can we, before it gets away on me at least, could you tell us how and why you got started in your own business?
Yes,
and in Future Food?
Yes, of course. So my background was always in food and beverage management. I trained in Ireland and in London. And when I came to Australia, I had a position as a senior lecturer at Victoria University. Part of that was that when I arrived in Australia at the age of 28, I needed to go into industry in Australia. I'd never worked in Australia. So I started doing functions and events, special catering projects and one-off catering projects. So I was learning while I was lecturing, and I was getting an insight into the industry. And that showed me quite clearly that there was a demand for my skills to bring expertise into training, food and beverage operations, setting up businesses, bringing in international standard of work. And that filtered through over a period of 3 or 4 years where I was able to balance my lecturing commitments and training commitments and then transfer that into part-time consultancy. So in 1993, I was able to set up Future Food as a fully fledged food and beverage consultancy with a team that would support me in developing a range of services to plan, manage and evaluate food and beverage operations in Australia and in New Zealand. That continued across many sectors, and that continued then to to take us into the Asian market in 1994 with projects in Indonesia, projects in Singapore, projects in Malaysia and China.
It sounds like a fairly explosive start, and you came and you know in academia, but then coupled that with working on the tools, as they say, and you know getting some rich experience, but to achieve having clients in offshore places within it sounds like 4 or 5 years is pretty impressive. So you must have been doing something very helpful and quite progressive.
And I think for me, it's always about looking at a situation and going into a restaurant, going into a function, a venue, going into a gallery, going into an airport and say, this is 2000. In the year 2000, what is best practice? This operation is scoring 6 out of 10 in its performance financially, and it's scoring maybe 6.5 in its operation. So looking at the business of food and best practice benchmark, explain to the client in a structured and disciplined way, this is what you need to do to grow your food and beverage and to make sure that this asset is complementing your overall building, or your food and beverage is drawing foot traffic, and off that foot traffic, other retail operations and other services are benefiting from that as well. So direct approach, being direct, being honest, and delivering the goods. Stay with your client and stay focused.
Yeah. So what was the motivation for you to start the business? Was it a combination of seeing an opportunity and from what you just said and the way you said it, was it things need to be better or can be better and I want to make an impact yes. I want to make a difference?
Exactly. Things can be better. Food and beverage doesn't have to be difficult. Things can be better. More profit can be made. The operator can have more pride in his business and you will have satisfied customers. Food and beverage is a catalyst to drive foot traffic. People will walk an extra block. They will go up in an elevator to the second floor if it's a cocktail bar, or the top floor of the cocktail bar, wherever it is, because the product justifies the effort to go there. And it's really important not to cut corners with food and beverage. Good quality ingredients, produced and served with pride, training staff, understanding your costs, and then assess it. What can we do better? And then assess it again. How can we make it better still? Food and beverage is a live working experience. It's not like clothes hanging on a rack. Food and beverage is about meet, greet, and seat. Meet your customer with the best product. Seat them at a table in an environment where they're comfortable and secure, and seat them in such a way that they feel welcome and that they're there to spend money.
That's excellent. And on today's edition of Small Business Banter Community Radio and Podcast, talking with Francis Loughran, founder at Future Food and recent seller of that business. Francis, can you talk a little bit about you've achieved a lot over the years. I'm not sure that you started out with an exit in mind, but we'll talk about the exit at a later time. What were the hardest parts about getting started in your own business?
The hardest part for me was, in the beginning, was making sure that I was able to document the cases and the work that I'd done to date. Because in the beginning, people would say to me, "What do you do?" They'd never met a food service consultant. They hadn't worked with anybody who was a food service consultant. They didn't know there was a team of skills out there that could plan, manage, and execute and review their business for them and enlighten them on what they needed to do. So the first 10 years of the 34 years of consulting, I spent lecturing, presenting at conferences and conventions and small groups and organisation and property management council, breakfasts and property council meeting, morning teas, where they get a group of property managers in, and we would go in and explain who we are and what we do, using a PowerPoint presentation to show the range of skills that we had on the projects that we'd worked on recently. That education paid off, because once we established that the client in property management, ownership, development, etc., knew that our skills was there, then they came back to us year after year after year.
So that's a significant investment, and it really is educating the broader market, isn't it?
That's right, because we knew that we had the skills to address the solutions that they needed, but we had to document those and communicate them in order to secure the position.
Did they always know that they needed it, or was it partly about your language was the business of food, and you could demonstrate that better food equals more rent equals higher?
Of course, yep. I would stand with my client in front of their shop, their cafe, their restaurant, and I would explain to them what I see. And they would often say to me, Francis, I would never have gathered that. I would never have identified that problem. I'd never identified that I had no signage at the front of my business. I didn't identify that my service was bad, or that on my menu I didn't have any vegetarian choices that people wanted, and my coffee was bad. People do not know what they do not know. And a lot of people go into business, especially in food outlets, because they think it's going to be easy. Food operations, food management, and food profitability is not easy. It has a disciplined approach, it has a process, and it has an end goal. And those have to be explained under the banner of the business of food.
Yeah, it's a very glamorous industry, and I know from my own experience, it does attract people that have always dreamed about running a cafe or a winery or a restaurant, and and it's wonderful that we have that enthusiasm and that entrepreneurship. But it when the way you talk, it's very clear that there's a lot of science and a lot of process behind making any of those sorts of businesses successful, including your own.
Exactly. And there are 5 stages to any business, and those 5 stages are actually the services that you explain to your potential client or existing client, so that they understand that stage 1 feeds into stage 2, as to 3, as to 4, and then 5, so that those master planning stages have a sequence. And first of all is, who is my customer and what do they want? And that is crucial, because everybody might turn around and say in a meeting, we want a 6-star cafe, we want a 6-star food court. That is not what their customer wants. The customer wants food and beverage positioned at the spend category in which they are pitched.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fundamental question, an important question for any business, isn't it? Just who is your customer? What are we shooting for? But okay, that's one. And then what are the others in your?
Well, first of all is what I call the client engagement. Listen to what the client is telling you that they want. Help them understand what you believe that they should want. So that engagement stage 1 is, who are my customers and what do I want? And what is the concept or the developed project that we are going to agree on? Number 2.
There's a lot of listening in that, isn't there?
A lot of listening, because the client has to tell you what they believe they want. And you have to ask them, is that what you believe is going to maximize your business? Because you have to get the product and the customer aligned so that the customer will come back time and time again. If you get it wrong, in today's business where you're paying $6,000-7,000 a square meter fit out, and you're paying 10 or 12% rent plus outgoings and labor cost and food cost, you cannot afford to get it wrong, because if you do, the financial downside of that is extremely devastating.
Well, you're so far invested in capital before you even open the door, aren't you?
You have. It's an expensive industry because you're not only locking into a rental or built environment, you're locking into fit out, kitchen, extraction, staff training, liquor licensing, pre-opening, and everything else to do with the comfort levels of a modern food and beverage tenancy, coupled with any form of entertainment or special features.
Yeah. So I can see your deep expertise here in in understanding and guiding businesses through to greater success. So, sorry, I have interrupted, but can we go through 2 to 5 relatively quickly? Because I still want to kind of put them in context of your experience as a business owner.
Yes, of course. So number 1 is obviously the client engagement. Number 2 is the trade area review. Look at what is in the proposed trade area, what's existing, what is done well, and where's the gap analysis.
It's like your marketplace and your competitors.
Your complete marketplace. You're using technology for your pinpoint market technology through digital engagement. Number 3, obviously, you've got the business case, which is the projected turnover and cash flow for the first 5 years. Number 4, you've got your food and beverage concept. Which concept or concepts are going to fit into that marketing stage, the market gap stage? And then number 5, of course, is the built environment, producing the brief for the size of restaurant, its interior design positioning, and its modus operandi.
So it's so comprehensive. I sense that in I think you had 34 years in.
That's correct.
So was one of the big aims coming up to preparing to sell the business? Actually, no, if I go back even further, to service your clients properly was to think hard and document these processes and this 5-step process for making success out of a site. I mean, is that deeply embedded into the business?
Yes, most definitely. Systems and procedures. What was the criteria for stage 1 to be developed and researched? What's the criteria for stage 2? What is the criteria for the business case? The business case has to be looked at in so many ways. It has to be looked at that the cost of setting up the business and the rate of return is only one part of it. It's getting the business case set up at the average spend, whether that's a cup of coffee at $5.08, including credit card charges, or is it a $49 main course? So you have to understand that projection is clearly built on knowing the menu, knowing the customer spend, and then looking at the foot traffic multiplication.
Yeah. And this is in dealing with business owners day to day who are at the start of their business life or maybe nearing the end. It's the passion but converting the passion that you clearly have into processes and procedures is one very effective way to build a business that's sustainable, because I know from early days it was yourself and you grew to 20 or 25 staff, including probably 10 or 12 consultants who largely ran off all of this, all these processes that you developed. And that took a lot of time and effort on your behalf, right? We're talking 10 years to educate the market. We're talking lots of investment of time in documenting all these things. So that's, I'd say, one of the clear reasons for success in being able to ultimately exit. Would you agree?
Most definitely. The ability to have systems and procedures that consultants can be trained, that they can use as guides, and they can explain the process, and that's crucial.
Yeah. What else were the, because we are going to we're going to come up to the end shortly, and we're going to come back for the following week and talk very specifically about your exit and the planning for it. But just to finish, round out the other keys to building something that was sellable and that was successful, we've talked about those systems and procedures. We've talked about your personal commitment through those early days. What are the other things that you really defined and helped set up the business for sale?
I think the thing about it was that when you've documented the projects that you worked on, and those projects can be visited by a potential client or a developer, and you can take them and stand there, or you can put a reference contact person that said, we worked with Francis on this, and sorting out the menus for the last 3 years for BHP has really changed our purchasing, has really changed the diversity of our menu offers. It has reduced wastage. It has increased a range of popular dishes to reflect the demographics of the new Indian workforce or the new Muslim workforce, or the growth in healthy eating, or the growth in females. You can talk with confidence in front of your client and in front of your potential client. And that in itself gives the potential client the confidence to say, this has been a successful project, as obviously explained. I will go with Future Food.
Yeah, you don't need to listen to me. You can read about the success. Call it a testimonial or an endorsement.
Exactly.
But I think again, underpinning a good testimonial is and Future Food's total commitment to getting it right in the first place, using all of that IP that you've developed over many years. And then talking the business of food, right, and converting traffic to money. Ultimately, not that it's all just about money, but it's a very well understood currency. Francis, that's all we've got time for today. We're going to, for those listening, we're going to come back in the next episode, and we're going to talk very specifically from the beginning about Francis's approach to planning for a sale of the business. I'm really looking forward to that, Francis. Thanks so much for your time today.
Michael, and thank you, Michael.
So that is all for today's episode of Small Business Banter. I continue to be inspired bringing you small business experts and other small business owners and hearing their stories. If you want to listen to any past episode, jump onto your podcast platform of choice and search Small Business Banter. There you will find a diverse and fascinating collection of small business owners and experts openly discussing and sharing their experiences. For any of the links, resources or information we've talked about on the show today, or to contact me, please head over to smallbusinessbanter.com, or you can find us on Facebook and Instagram. And it would be great to have you tune in the same time next week for another episode of Small Business Banter.